Okay, so talking today about operant conditioning as another form of learning. So operant conditioning basically states that behavior depends on the consequences that follow that behavior. So depending on the consequences for a behavior, it's either that we're going to see that behavior again in the future or not see it again. It becomes more or less likely to occur depending on the consequences. So with operant conditioning then, there are two consequences that can follow behavior. So first, reinforcement. Reinforcement makes it more likely that we'll see this behavior again in the future. So taking this little example here, if you have a dog who begs at the dinner table, if you give that dog some food, what happens? The next time you sit down to eat dinner, guess what? Your dog is there begging for food, right? You have reinforced or strengthened that response in your dog, strengthened that behavior. Punishment, on the other hand, weakens a response, makes it less likely that this response will happen again in the future. So same scenario, you have your dog begging at the table, you say to the dog, "No!" and then the dog goes and lays down. You have weakened that behavior in your dog so that the next time you sit down to eat, your dog's not going to be there begging for food because your dog knows that you're just going to say no. So the consequences, what immediately follows the behavior, is very important in shaping that behavior for the future. There are two different types of reinforcement. And again, with reinforcement, remember, we are strengthening a response. We want to see this particular behavior happen again in the future. Okay, so with reinforcement and punishment, there is this very specific vocabulary of positive and negative. Don't think of these in the way that we use them in everyday conversation, where positive means something good and negative means something bad. In behaviorism, or this learning psychology, positive basically means that you are adding something, and negative means that you're taking something away. So positive reinforcement then, you have some kind of pleasant consequence that follows a response. So it's the addition of something pleasant following a response, and it strengthens that behavior, making it more likely that you'll do this behavior again in the future. So to take our example here, we have studying behavior. You have a pleasant consequence that follows your studying. You get an A+ in your class. Excellent. So the next time you have to prepare for an exam, what do? You study the same way that you did before. So in that way then, the consequence of getting the good grade is shaping your future behavior. With negative reinforcement, you're taking something away. You remove an unpleasant consequence following a response, also making it more likely that you're going to do this behavior again in the future. Okay, so taking your same example of studying behavior. Let's say that you live at home with your parents and your mom and your dad are constantly bothering you because they don't think that you're studying enough. So they're nagging you. So you're like, all right, I'm going to study a lot for this upcoming exam. And guess what? They stop bothering you. It removes the unpleasant consequence of nagging. And then the next time that you have an exam, you're going to study again. You're going to perform that same behavior so you can avoid this unpleasant consequence of nagging. Punishment also has positive and negative punishment. Okay, so with punishment, remember, our goal is to decrease or make it less likely that we'll see this behavior again in the future. With positive punishment, an unpleasant consequence is added. An unpleasant consequence follows a response, reducing the likelihood that you're going to do this behavior again in the future. So taking our same example of studying, let's say that you are studying so much, you're in the library all the time, and your friends start to make fun of you. They're like, wow, you're such a loser, you're always studying, you never hang out with us anymore, what is wrong with you? And that is adding something that is unpleasant, right? So as a result then, you want to avoid that unpleasant consequence, and so you decrease your studying behavior. Negative punishment then, a pleasant consequence is removed. So you basically miss out on something that you could potentially enjoy or something that you would potentially like. Again, making the response less likely to occur. So your same behavior of studying here, you miss out on time with your friends, right? That's something that you would enjoy, but because you're studying all the time, you don't get to have that time with them. So what do? You change your behavior. You stop studying as much so that you can then hang out with your friends. So sometimes it can be challenging for students to differentiate between positive and negative punishment and reinforcement. So when you're going through examples, first I want you to decide, what is the goal, right? Are we looking at reinforcement or punishment? So if the goal is to increase a particular behavior, do we want you to do this behavior again in the future? Then we're looking at reinforcement. If the goal is to decrease a behavior, we do not want you to do this behavior again in the future, then we're looking at punishment. So when you are looking at these specific examples in the worksheets and when you take your quizzes online, I want you to pay very, very close attention here and first decide if it's reinforcement or if it's punishment. After you have determined if it's reinforcement or punishment, to determine if it's positive or negative, okay? So if you've determined it's reinforcement, the goal is to increase this behavior, we want to see it again, then I want you to determine if a pleasant consequence has been added, if a pleasant consequence follows the behavior, or if an unpleasant consequence has been removed or taken away, and that'll help you determine if it's positive or negative reinforcement. If you've determined that it's punishment, the goal is to decrease this behavior. We do not want to see this behavior again in the future. Determine then, has an unpleasant consequence been added? Then it's positive punishment. Or has a pleasant consequence been removed or taken away? And then it is negative punishment. So make sure that you use that model, okay? First decide if it's punishment or reinforcement, and then determine if it's positive or negative. It's like a decision tree to help you get to the correct answer.